He carefully scraped off the date on the ID, added 10 years to the age, and then skillfully transferred the logo from an airplane model to this meticulously crafted fake check. Dressed in a pilot's uniform, he strode confidently into the bank.
I have a payroll check here I'd like to cash.
Excuse me. I'm sure you hear this all the time, but you have the most beautiful eyes I have ever seen.
Yeah, I do get that all the time.
With his silver tongue and convincing disguise, he swindled his first big score in life. He was only 16 years old that year. This young man was Frank Abagnale, America's boldest con artist. His career was legendary. Posing as a pilot, he flew 2 million miles for free, visiting over 20 countries. Pretending to be a doctor, he became a hospital supervisor. He even disguised himself as a lawyer, becoming an assistant to the state prosecutor. So, how did such a genius con artist come to be? Let's go back to the beginning of the story. Frank came from a well-off family. His father was a respected entrepreneur, and his mother was a beautiful, elegant housewife. Their family should have been the epitome of happiness. However, fate had other plans. His father's business collapsed overnight due to tax evasion. The hefty fines were like a heavy hammer, shattering their lives. The family of 3 moved from their luxurious mansion to a cramped apartment, their former glory completely gone. This sudden change caught young Frank off guard. He was forced to transfer from an elite school to a regular high school. On his first day, he still wore the expensive uniform of his former school, immediately becoming a target for bullies.
Yeah, it looks like a substitute teacher.
The bullies' mockery echoed through the classroom. This comment, however, sparked a bold idea in Frank's mind. If that's the case, why not play along? Without missing a beat, he calmly walked to the front of the class.
Quiet down, people! My name is Mr. Abagnale. That's Abagnale, not Abagnale, not Abagnale, but Abagnale.
Frank's performance was flawless. His authoritative demeanor successfully fooled the entire class. The student who had mocked him was even called to the front to stand as punishment and recite the lesson. When the real substitute teacher finally arrived, Frank remained composed.
Well, I always sub for Roberto.
It wasn't until a week later that the principal discovered this ridiculous farce. Surprisingly, Frank's father didn't reprimand his son for this feat, but instead showed a hint of admiration. This became Frank's first successful performance in life and planted the seeds for countless shocking cons in the future. The dramatic changes in their life continued. One day, Frank came home early and accidentally caught a strange man leaving his mother's room. He instantly understood what was happening and sat silently on the couch, his mind in turmoil. His mother handed him some money, as if to compensate for her guilt. Not long after, when Frank pushed open the front door again, the scene before him left him feeling as if he'd fallen into an icy pit. His parents were signing divorce papers. They calmly asked him to choose who he wanted to live with from now on. This seemingly simple choice was catastrophic for Frank. Unable to accept the shattering of his once happy family, an indescribable anger and despair welled up inside him. He ran out without looking back, bought a train ticket, and resolutely left this place of heartbreak. Upon arriving in New York, Frank quickly ran out of money. To make ends meet, he started using the checkbook his father had given him. However, due to overdrafts, the hotel owner discovered the problem when trying to cash the checks at the bank. That night, the hotel owner mercilessly kicked him out. Frank didn't give up. He keenly discovered a loophole in the bank's check system and came up with a bold plan. He carefully scraped the age off his ID with a knife, erased the edges with an eraser, then filled in new numbers, and cleverly replaced the name on it. However, when he tried to cash the forged check at the bank, he was met with cold indifference.
I'm sorry, but we are not allowed to take checks from people we don't know.
Frank tried several banks before realizing that his youthful appearance and immature dress made bank staff suspicious of his identity. Just as Frank was at a loss, a pilot in a crisp uniform caught his eye. In that era, pilots were admired high-end professionals, treated like celebrities wherever they went, with children clamoring for their autographs. This scene inspired Frank, and a genius plan instantly formed in his mind. He first pretended to be a student journalist and went to Pan American Airways, Pan AM, for an interview. With his excellent eloquence, he extracted a lot of inside information about pilots from the person in charge, and unexpectedly obtained an about-to-expire Federal Aviation Administration credential. Then, he cleverly called the airline's purchasing department, claiming that he had accidentally lost his work uniform and requested a replacement.
Why so nervous?
How'd you feel if you, lost your uniform first week on the job?
Relax. At Pan Am, there are lots of uniforms.
And just like that, he got a custom-tailored pilot uniform. With this pilot uniform, Frank instantly became the most eye-catching star on the street. Passers-by cast admiring glances at him, boosting his confidence. He went to the bank again, and this time, he was personally received by the lobby manager and easily cashed his first big score in life. This uniform seemed to be a key that opened the door to wealth, and even hotels were happy to cash his checks. A kind front desk worker even revealed an insider tip to him. Personal checks could only be cashed for up to $100, but payroll checks could be cashed for up to $300. This information made Frank's eyes light up, and he immediately began concocting an even grander plan. He visited the bank again, this time targeting a beautiful female teller.
Welcome, Miami Mutual Bank. How may I help you?
My name is Frank Taylor. I'm a co-pilot for Pan Am. I'd like to cash this check here, and then I'd like to take you out for a steak dinner.
With his handsome appearance and the status represented by the pilot uniform, Frank easily won the bank teller's favor. Under his sweet-talk offensive, he subtly extracted more professional knowledge about check anti-counterfeiting from her. Subsequently, Frank bought a magnetic ink character recognition (MICR) encoder at an auction for a high price. With this magic tool, he could soon perfectly replicate check codes that could pass bank detection. His forgery skills reached a new level. He soaked the airline's plane model in the bathtub, carefully peeled off the logo when it softened, then cleverly stuck it on the already printed check, and finally pressed it flat with heavy books. Thus, a payroll check from the airline that could pass for real was born. Frank went to the bank again, and this time he cashed it successfully with ease. Having tasted success, he became unstoppable from then on. He began mass-producing fake checks while using his pilot identity to enjoy the privilege of free flights, traveling around the country to commit fraud and cash out. During this journey, he also encountered a charming flight attendant, enjoying this luxurious adventure like a winner in life. However, as the amounts on the fake checks grew larger, Frank finally caught the attention of the FBI. The sharp and capable agent Carl Hanratty began to pursue this mysterious con artist with full force. Based on the spending records of the fake checks, Carl traced Frank to a hotel. When he burst into the room, the scene before him was shocking. The room was filled with various sophisticated counterfeiting equipment. Just then, the sound of a flushing toilet came from the bathroom. Carl immediately became alert, pointing his gun at the bathroom door. However, Frank, who walked out, appeared unusually calm and began an impressive impromptu performance.
Oh, that's the new IBM Selectric.
Put your hands on your head.
The print type in 5 seconds.
Shut up!
Pop out the ball.
Put your hands on your head. Put your hands.
To himself from
Put it down. Drop it.
Relax. You're late, all right? My name's Alan, Barry Allen, United States Secret Service. Your boy just tried to jump out the window. My partner has him in custody.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The cautious Carl demanded to see Frank's credentials. Frank calmly handed over his wallet, but just as Carl was about to open it, he cleverly diverted his attention.
Hey, look, just do me a favor. Take a look outside. Look out the window. My partner's walking him to the car as we speak. Look.
In fact, Frank's partner was just an ordinary guest staying next door. But his superb acting and convincing performance completely fooled Carl. Frank claimed he needed to go downstairs to fetch evidence and asked Carl to stay in the room to guard the scene. After Frank left, Carl became increasingly suspicious. He opened the wallet only to find it full of meaningless label stickers. He rushed to the window to check and realized that Frank had slipped away right under his nose. Frank's legendary exploits soon made headlines in major newspapers. The media gave him a catchy nickname, the James Bond of the Sky. Frank was quite fond of this title, so he started emulating Bond's image from the movies, buying similar suits and expensive sports cars, and began living a glamorous and luxurious life. One evening, Frank encountered an alluring call girl in the hotel hallway. After entering his room, she quoted a price of $1,000 for the night. Frank readily agreed, then took out a fake check for $1,400 from his pocket, saying he would go downstairs to cash it. However, the woman stopped him.
It's a cashier's check. Endorse it over to me.
No, I couldn't do that. See, this check is for $1,400. We agreed upon $1,000.
Why don't I give you back $400 and you give me that check?
Just like that, Frank not only enjoyed a free night, but also profited $400. On Christmas Eve, Carl, who was on duty, received an unexpected phone call. The voice on the other end was Frank, whom he had been desperately seeking. Frank apologized for previously tricking Carl and even generously disclosed his upcoming travel plans. However, the experienced Carl saw through Frank's loneliness.
You didn't call just to apologize, did you?
What do you mean?
You have no one else to call. Oh.
Indeed, it was as Carl had guessed. Frank had always thought his parents divorced because the family fell into economic crisis, so he desperately conned and earned large sums of money, vainly hoping to save his broken family with money. However, when he hopefully tried to reconcile his parents, he learned that his mother had remarried, and his father was under close monitoring for tax issues. This cruel reality made Frank realize that all his efforts had been in vain. Meanwhile, Carl was tirelessly investigating Frank's true identity. A casual remark from a restaurant waiter pointed him in the right direction. The name Barry Allen on the fake checks, isn't that the real identity of the Flash? This discovery was an epiphany for Carl. No wonder there were no fingerprints on the fake checks. The perpetrator was a minor obsessed with comics. Carl immediately began investigating all runaway cases in New York and soon found a lead on Frank's mother. By comparing photos, he finally confirmed Frank's true identity. On the other side, Frank met a nurse named Brenda at the hospital. This pure and lovely girl made Frank's heart flutter. To win Brenda's heart, he once again used all his skills, utilizing his superior forgery techniques to create a fake Harvard Medical School degree. With this shining credential, he easily landed a job as a hospital supervisor. However, Frank, who knew nothing about medicine, could only learn medical knowledge by watching TV dramas. Luckily, he was in a management position and didn't need to diagnose patients personally. But this luck didn't last long. One night, the hospital suddenly admitted a severely injured patient. With the attending physician absent, the intern could only turn to the experienced supervisor Frank for help. When Frank saw the patient's bloody and mangled thigh, he immediately felt dizzy. The intern proposed a treatment plan, and Frank quickly nodded, letting him handle it. After leaving the ward, Frank immediately rushed to the bathroom. This experience made him deeply realize that being a doctor was far more difficult than he had imagined. Despite this, Frank still successfully captured Brenda's heart. Their relationship developed rapidly, and soon they were talking about marriage. When he learned that Brenda's father was a renowned lawyer, Frank had a new idea. Why not become a lawyer? Just as Frank was basking in the sweetness of love, Carl finally tracked him down. When Carl arrived at the hospital, Frank was long gone, leaving behind only the printer used to make fake checks in his office, silently testifying to the scam. At this time, Frank was having dinner with his future in-laws. To impress his father-in-law, he casually mentioned that before studying medicine, he had obtained a law degree from Berkeley University. Little did he know that Frank's father-in-law was actually a Berkeley alumnus, and he keenly noticed the flaws in Frank's story. After dinner, the father-in-law called Frank aside and bluntly questioned his true identity and intentions. Frank knew he had nowhere to hide and could only confess.
The truth is that I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer. I'm nothing, really. I'm just a kid who's in love with your daughter.
This sincere confession unexpectedly touched Brenda's father. He recalled that he too was once a penniless young man. He admired Frank's intelligence and courage and expressed willingness to give him a chance to start anew. At this turning point, Frank was determined to turn over a new leaf. With his extraordinary intelligence and amazing learning ability, he passed the bar exam in just 2 weeks. Under his father-in-law's arrangement, Frank successfully became an assistant to the state prosecutor. Everything seemed to be heading in a good direction. Brenda's family gave Frank the long-lost warmth he had been craving, which was exactly the family atmosphere he had always desired. Frank was determined to cherish this hard-earned happiness. However, fate always likes to play jokes. On another Christmas Eve, Frank received a call from Carl. He confided in Carl about his desire to start anew.
I want it to be over. I want it to be over. I'm getting married. You know, I'm settling down.
You've stolen almost $4 million. You think we can just call that a wedding present? No, this isn't something you get to walk away from, Frank.
I want to call a truce.
No truce. You will be caught. You will go to prison. Where did you think this was going?
Please leave me alone, Carl.
On his wedding night, Carl arrived as promised. Seeing this, Frank immediately slipped back to his room to pack his bags. In this critical moment, Frank had to confess everything to Brenda. My identity is fake. My age is fake. The crimes are real, but loving you is also real. Frank opened his suitcase, which was full of banknotes he had swindled from banks. He promised to meet Brenda at the airport in 2 days, then escaped through the window. Carl rushed upstairs with his gun drawn, only to see a banknote floating out from the door crack. He pushed open the door to find the room filled with scattered dollar bills and a tearful Brenda. At the appointed time, Brenda appeared at the airport as scheduled. Frank was about to approach her when he keenly noticed several plainclothes policemen surrounding Brenda. He immediately realized that Brenda had betrayed him. By now, Carl had set up an inescapable net at the airport, making escape seem impossible. But as a top-notch con artist, Frank always had a way out of danger. He once again donned that pilot uniform that had brought him so much success and came to a school under the pretense of recruiting flight attendants. After several rounds of selection, he finally chose 8 young and beautiful girls. The group, dressed in uniform, entered the airport in grand style. Everyone, including the police, was captivated by these eye-catching flight attendants, and no one noticed the captain following behind. Carl had once again fallen for Frank's diversionary tactics.
Frank, step out of the car. Keep your hands where I can see them.
Don't shoot me. I'm just a driver. A man paid me $100 to wear this uniform, pick someone up at the airport.
Who are you picking up? Hey!
7 months later, Frank's footprints were all over the globe. His forgery techniques had become even more advanced, almost indistinguishable from the real thing. Meanwhile, Carl received an important clue from a printing master. There were only a handful of printing machines in the world capable of producing such high-quality counterfeit checks, and one of them was in France. This information reminded Carl of a detail from his previous investigation. Frank's parents had mentioned that they met in a small town in France, and he had specifically asked about the name of that town. On another Christmas Eve, Carl arrived at this French town. There was only one printing factory in the town. He secretly infiltrated it and found it filled with checks and a machine tirelessly running. Carl shut down the machine, waking Frank from his sleep. Seeing Carl's appearance, Frank seemed unusually excited, as if he had seen an old friend he hadn't seen in years. But Carl coldly reminded him that his purpose was still to bring him to justice. He told Frank that the factory was surrounded by French police, and if he dared to take one step out of the door, he would be shot on the spot. This time, Frank finally felt genuine fear. He no longer played tricks and obediently let Carl handcuff him. However, when they walked out of the factory door together, Frank was surprised to find that there was no one outside, let alone any French police. This time, it was Frank who had been tricked. But the French police did arrive late, forcibly taking Frank away from Carl. Carl helplessly said,
Don't worry, Frank. I'll have you extradited back to the United States. Don't worry.
For years later, Carl finally arrived as promised to bring Frank back to the United States. When he pushed open the door of that dark and damp cell, the sight before him shocked him. The once vibrant Frank had been tortured beyond recognition. On the plane back to the United States, Frank learned of his father's death. This news hit him like a bolt from the blue, and he hid in the bathroom, sobbing uncontrollably. As the plane was about to land, the bathroom suddenly went quiet. Carl anxiously broke open the door, only to find that Frank had seemingly vanished into thin air. Upon careful inspection, Carl found a few loose screws on the floor. He then realized that Frank had actually disassembled the toilet and escaped through the pipe. However, this time Frank wasn't running away. He headed straight for his mother's residence. Through the window, he saw the warm and harmonious scene inside. his long unseen mother enjoying a happy time with her family. Suddenly, a little girl bounced to the window. When Frank learned that this was his half-sister, his emotions were mixed. He finally understood that his mother had a new family, a new life, and he had truly become a man without a home. In the end, Frank was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Fearing he might escape, the prison authorities placed him in solitary confinement. Carl often visited Frank, always bringing him the latest issue of the Flash comics. Whenever the FBI encountered tricky forgery cases, Carl would come to Frank for advice. With Carl's persistent efforts, Frank finally got the opportunity for parole. He was arranged to work at the FBI, starting a new chapter in his life. However, the monotonous daily work soon made Frank feel incredibly bored. He began to entertain thoughts of escape again. One weekend, he once again put on that pilot uniform he had been dreaming of and quietly came to the airport. Just as he was about to use his old tricks, Carl suddenly appeared in front of him. It turned out that Carl had long sensed Frank's intentions. But this time, Carl didn't stop him, instead calmly saying,
"I'm going to let you fly tonight, Frank. Not even going to try to stop you, because I know you'll be back on Monday."
Yeah. How do you know I'll come back?
Look, Frank, nobody's chasing you.
These words hit Frank like a thunderbolt, making him suddenly realize. He finally understood that what truly confined him was never external shackles, but the fear in his heart and his habitual tendency to escape. Frank didn't disappoint Carl. On Monday morning, he appeared in the office on time. Seeing Frank's figure, Carl showed a gratified smile. This movie is called Catch Me If You Can, directed by the famous Hollywood director Steven Spielberg, adapted from Frank Abagnale's autobiography of the same name. If you enjoyed this, I recommend watching the original movie. If you like my program, please remember to subscribe to my channel, where I will share more exciting movies with you. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you in the next video.